Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Joanne Smedley, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Lieutenant Commander Phil Bywaters. We warmly welcome the family of Private Frederick John Carpenter, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in the singing of the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament. Flowers of the forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Frederick John Carpenter. Frederick Carpenter was born in Melbourne in February 1885 to Frederick and Elizabeth Carpenter. At some point, the family moved to New South Wales, where Fred, as he was known to friends and family, found work as a gardener. At the age of 20, but giving his age as 21, Carpenter joined the Royal Navy. After serving on 2 British ships stationed in Australian waters, HMS Pioneer and HMS Challenger, he left the Navy in 1912. In July 1915, Carpenter enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force at Liverpool in New South Wales. He trained for 3 months before sailing to Egypt in November, where he continued his training in the Australian Army camps. Soon after his arrival in Egypt, Carpenter contracted mumps and spent a short time in hospital recovering. By the end of the year, the British and Allied forces had withdrawn from the Gallipoli Peninsula, and the AIF was being reorganised and preparing to move to the Western Front. In February 1916, Carpenter joined his unit, the 3rd Australian Infantry Battalion. The unit arrived in France at the end of March and travelled by train from the southern port of Marseille to the north of the country, near the Belgian border. Known as the nursery sector, the men trained in the methods of trench warfare in an area that was less active than other sectors of the Western Front. In mid-July, the 3rd Battalion moved to the Somme sector, near the French city of Albert. The objective was the village of Pozières and the ridgeline of relatively high ground behind it. Just before midnight on the 22nd of July, the men of the 3rd Battalion moved into position, attacking Pozières the next morning. All objectives were captured, but over the following days, the Germans maintained a heavy artillery fire on the ground the Australians had taken. By the 27th of July, the 3rd Battalion had lost nearly half of its men as casualties, dead, wounded, or missing. Carpenter was among the lost. His comrades later record that he had been killed by a shell and buried in a trench. When the battalion was relieved of its duty on the 27th of July, the precise place of his burial was unknown. It was not until November that Australian military authorities officially declared him killed in action. He was 31 years old. Fred Carpenter's name is inscribed on the Australian National Memorial at Villers-Bretonneux in France, which lists the names of over 10,000 Australians who were killed in France and who have no known grave. Carpenter was survived in Australia by his father, his sisters Ivy and Edith, and his brother Alfred. Private Frederick John Carpenter is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his name listed on the Australian National Memorial at Villers-Bretonneux is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Frederick John Carpenter, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening.